is Rachel and I'm here today with a book haul. So these are all of the books that I have got since I returned from Switzerland. So I came back from Switzerland in April. It's now the end of July. So I feel like I've done alright. There are a lot of books here, but when I remember that I bought these in the last 4 months, fair enough, that makes sense. I have actually read a lot of the books that I'm going to talk about, maybe around half of the books I'm going to talk about. So if I've read them, I will link in the cards to my wrap up where I talk about them, or just any video where I talk about them, and then you can go and see what my more in-depth thoughts are, because I'm probably not going to talk about any of them in depth in this video. First section of books I have are graphic novels. The first one being Queer: A Graphic History by Meg John Barker and Julia Shield. This is kind of like an academic graphic novel. It goes through the history of queer theory, major people who affected queer theory, major ideas in queer theory, challenges to queer theory, feminist queer theory, lots of lovely stuff like that. The illustrations are all black and white, and the book in itself is very simple in the way that it talks about these things. However, that is because it is very much an overview of the topic and not a detailed look at it, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's the first one. I love this book. I think I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Next, I have a book that I won't stop rabbiting on about, so I will keep this short, but it is Be Prepared by Vera Brosgol. Vera Brosgol is also the person behind Anya's Ghost, which I very much enjoyed. And this is about a little Russian girl who goes to a Russian summer camp, and once she gets there, she's like, I don't want to be here, I really don't want to go here, please take me home. Mum won't take her home, and she's got to spend her summer at the summer camp, and it's all about the trials and tribulations of her time at this camp. And the illustrations are absolutely gorgeous. This is definitely one of those where it's like the perfect graphic novel for someone like me who loves like a quiet graphic novel, isn't into like Marvel, DC kind of comics. This is perfect. Next we have the wonderful Heartstopper. This is volume 2, so I do follow this comic online and I keep up to date with it. However, I love having physical copies of it and reading it physically because I love the way that Alice Oseman sets out the graphic novel. As you can see here, she doesn't just do it with panels following on from each other, they kind of spaced out wherever on the page, which yeah, is something just a bit different and something that I really enjoy about this graphic novel. I'm not going to tell you what happens in this graphic novel because this is the second volume, but the graphic novel in general follows Nick and Charlie and their relationship together, their friendship and other things. It's very sweet and lovely and would highly recommend it. And finally, the last graphic novel I have is the biggest difficulty in my life right now, and it is Larding Keeps Breaking Up With Me. I have bought this for my holiday and I don't go on holiday for another like 2 weeks, and I want to read this book so much. I keep seeing people online talking about it and I'm like, fuck you, I'm not reading it until my holiday. Because I don't have any graphic novels that I've not read that are like my kind of graphic novels, like I just talked about, like my perfect kind of graphic novels, except this one, because I bought this specifically so I had a graphic novel that I would love to take on holiday with me. So I'm literally just dying to read this and I can't, and I'm just, it's like a daily struggle. I look at it every day and I'm like, I want to read you and I can't. But this is basically about a girl, and I think she keeps going back to her ex-girlfriend, and her ex-girlfriend, or girlfriend slash ex-girlfriend, keeps breaking up with her all the time. And I think it's basically her getting over the relationship, but I don't know, because again, I haven't read it. From flicking through this book, this has the most aesthetically pleasing colour palette of a graphic novel I've ever seen. And I just think it sounds amazing and I want to read it so much. So let's see if I can manage to wait until my holiday. They were all the graphic novels that I had to talk about, so now I'm going to move on to the non-fiction books that I have. The first one I'm going to mention very briefly because I feel like no one cares. It's literally only me that cares about it, but I'm going to mention them anyway. So they are books about gardening. The first one is the Practical Gardener's Encyclopedia. It goes through all the different kinds of flowers and vegetables and tells you exact like harvesting times, temperatures, all that sort of good stuff. So this is kind of okay. However, the book that I'm absolutely loving and is actually brilliant is Step by Step Veg Patch by Lucy Halsall, and this is all about different vegetables, herbs, fruits, things like that that you can grow in your garden. I'm growing a lot of different vegetables, and so this has been absolutely perfect. I went through this book and tabbed all of the pages that were like for things that I was growing, and it's been really helpful in like explaining when to plant things outside. It's got loads of pictures of like things that can go wrong with your plant and like how you can tell. That's been really helpful. One of the chili plants had loads of like flies on it, but like in the soil, so it knew exactly what was wrong with that, and I was able to tell from this book, which was perfect. Got rid of that, and yeah, I love this book. I'm sorry because I feel like no one cares about gardening at my age, but I do, and yeah, here we are. This is a great book if you want to get a book about vegetable gardening. I would recommend. The next two books I have are on writing craft. The first one is The Anatomy of a Story by John Truby. I have read 108 pages of this so far. I'm really, really enjoying it. It's very in-depth, very focused, and there's so much good stuff in it, like so many tabs. I'm just reading this alongside my writing session, so I will read like 10 pages of this and then go into a writing session because I find reading writing craft books very motivating. This one is great so far, and the thing that I really love about it is that it will tell you about something to do with, for instance, character, and then it will take a very specific story that's quite famous, so you might have heard of it, and then Truby will apply everything that he's just been talking about to that movie or book, screenplay, whatever, and it makes it very clear. Like it's in the examples that he really consolidates your knowledge of what he's talking about. So one of the greatest examples I have of this is that he did it with characters and antagonists and having a web of antagonists. So not just having one person who is like the villain, who is the opposite of your main character, but also having side characters who challenge them in similar ways and having all of those crossed together. And he talked about A Streetcar Named Desire and how Blanche, yes, has Stanley, who's a knob, but also like Stanley's wife also contributes to Blanche's downfall, and the guy that she's like supposed to be marrying, the one she's seeing, also really contributes to that. So yeah, it was really, really good, and I would highly recommend this book. It's fantastic so far. I'm really, really enjoying it. So yeah, if you want a writing craft book, this one's great. And the other one I have is one that I haven't actually started reading yet, but it is On Editing, How to Edit Your Novel the Professional Way, and this is by Helen Corner-Bryan and Catherine Price. I got this because I don't have any books on editing, and I'm editing at the moment, and I am finding editing difficult. I have made a breakthrough recently, and I am a lot more able to edit, and I am making some progress, but it also is its own beast, and it's very difficult. I would say it's just as hard as writing a novel. Like, you get to the end of writing a novel and you're like, finally, I've finished writing a novel, I can say I've wrote a novel, and then you start editing and you're like, oh right, we're back at square one, this is just as fucking hard. So I got a book to help me to tackle that, and that's what this is. It's about editing. Then I have two more non-fictions to talk about. The first one is Boy Raised by Garrett Conley. The Truth Cannot Be Converted. This is Garrett Conley's memoir of his time at a conversion camp. So his parents sent him to a conversion camp because he was gay, and this is the story of him being there, what it was like, that sort of thing. There is a movie that's been made about this book, but I have not seen it because I want to read it first. It sounds terrifying because gay conversion therapy is absolutely terrifying. It is the thing of nightmares, but I do really want to read it because I'm interested in learning more about the topic. I have seen interviews of Garrett Conley that he is doing with his mother, and him and his mother are very close now, and I think his parents sent him to a conversion camp without really knowing what it was. I'm not completely sure, but from what the mother was saying in that video, like, she's very okay with her son being gay now, and she talks out against conversion therapy, but obviously she sent her son to a conversion camp. So I'm very interested to read this book and see how that kind of developed, how her opinion changed and what happened. So I'm really excited for this book. Excited's probably not the right word to use, but I just think it's going to be fascinating and interesting and something that people should read and know more about so that we can fucking stop them from happening, because it's disgusting. And then the last non-fiction book I have is Eat, Sweat, Play by Anna Kessel. How Sport Can Change Our Lives. This is all about women in sport, women in society, and how sport is sort of represented and done by women. I think this talks a lot about sort of the idea of things like women's football, women's tennis, and how those things are different. Like in women's tennis, they play less sets than in men's tennis. They don't play for as long, things like that. I think it also talks about like in school and PE, because I know there are a lot of girls at my school who would be really, really sporty and then they hit puberty and completely stop doing sport. I think that's a really common thing in teenage girls in this day and age. So I'm very excited to read this book and hear Anna Kessel's insights into the whole thing of sports and women. And obviously, like I said with the Haruki Murakami book that I read, I've been doing a lot more sport in the last few months, and I'm treating it like I treat writing, where I read writing craft books and it motivates me to do more. Reading books about sport actually motivate me to do more sport, and that can only be good for me. So I'm gonna continue my little sport reading journey with Eat, Sweat, Play. So they are all of my non-fiction books, and then finally we have my fiction books for this haul. So the first one was a present from my godmother, and it is Northanger Abbey and Persuasion in this little binder by Jane Austen. So when she saw this book, she thought of me and bought it for me as a present for me coming back from Switzerland. So that was very nice of her, and this edition was published in 1953. It's very nice. It's one of those like really flexible like leather copies, so this is really sweet and lovely. I'm very excited to have this. Next I have Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata, which I have literally just finished a few days ago. What did I give this? I think I gave it 3 stars or 3.5 stars, not sure, but I will be talking more about it in my wrap up at the end of this month. This follows a woman called, now I called her Keiko, I'm not sure if it would be Keiko, Kiko, unsure, but we basically follow this woman who loves working in a convenience store, and it's all that she wants to do. It's what she kind of gives her life to, and it's what she enjoys, and everyone around her cannot get their head around it, and they're all like, why don't you want to get married? Why don't you want a career? Why don't you want this? Why don't you want that? And she just wants her like part-time job in a convenience store. And this is a really interesting look at the sort of expectations society puts on people and what people actually want. Just found it very fascinating, very lovely. It is an odd little book, but an enjoyable one, and it is translated from Japanese by Ginny Tapley Takamori. So there's that one, loved that. And when I got this one, it was buy one get one half price in Waterstones, so I also got Ghostwall by Sarah Moss. I adore Sarah Moss. I've only read the titles on my Sarah Moss so far, but I'm hoping to change that. This book is set during the summer in Northumberland, and a teenage girl is taken by her parents to an encampment that is being run by a professor, and I think they basically live as they would have lived in the olden days, so like cooking over fires, living outside, that sort of a thing. This book just sounds fascinating. Apparently it's got a big look at feminism in it, which is something that I love. It's very short, and I'm hoping to take this on my holiday with me just because, yeah, I think it'll be good, and it's set in the height of summer, so you've got to take summer reads on your summer holidays, haven't you? So that's those two. Next book I have is Pulp by Robin Talley. I've read one other book by Robin Talley, As I Descended, which was a Macbeth retelling that I absolutely adored. I thought it was fantastic, and so I was really excited to hear that this one was coming out, and this sounds like a book that's right up my alley. So in this book we follow a woman called Janet in the 1950s who is having a relationship with her best friend, but obviously they have to keep that secret, and she is writing some sort of story that she's publishing under a pseudonym online. And then we have another storyline that's taking place nowadays where we have a girl who is researching 1950s lesbian pulp fiction, and she feels a link, whatever, connection to a specific author and goes to track her down. And from the sense of it, she's going to be the one from the first timeline. I don't know how those two things are going to connect. I don't really know what this story is like. I don't know if it's going to be like a romance story, an identity story. I have no idea, but I'm very interested in it because I love Robin Talley and I love lesbians. So I'm gonna enjoy this one. Next, I have Everything Leads to You by Nina LaCour. This was a book that I read last month because I was reading exclusively queer content because it was Pride. I think I gave it 4 stars when I read it, but maybe I'd give it 3 stars now. And I did really enjoy this book, I will say. Descriptions are absolutely lovely. They're like set up and it's just very like cutesy and sweet. I loved the main character. I loved hearing about her job. The main character is Emmy and she works in the film industry and she is a set designer, and hearing about her discussing set design and like how it works and all that sort of thing was fascinating because I didn't know anything about it, and you really do get a lot of insight into it in this book. So I'd recommend it on that front. Emmy goes to a sale that's being done at a house of a celebrity who has died. He is an old Hollywood actor. One of her friends buys a record. A letter falls out of the record that's supposed to be sent to one of his relatives upon his death, and Emmy and her best friend take it upon themselves to go and find his relative and give him the letter, and the story unfolds from there. Like I said, really enjoyed Emmy, really enjoyed a lot of the side characters. There were things that I loved in this book, but I just wasn't completely behind the love interest and the relationship because there was just so much going on that I can't actually imagine what the relationship was like with them together. So that was my only issue, but I did still really enjoy this one. And the last book is a book I cannot believe I haven't read yet. It makes me feel sick. But I'm either going to read it for the reading rush or I'm going to take it on holiday with me. So whichever of those I end up doing, I will be reading it. It is Lani by Max Porter. I love Max Porter. I adored Grief's Thing with Feathers. It was like my favourite book in the year that I read it, and I would put it up there with like probably in my top 20 books of all time. I just don't know what it is. I just had this connection to it. I just loved it so much. So when this came out, I knew I had to get it as soon as I could. I don't really know what this is about. I don't really care. Like, it's one of those where like Max Porter is someone who I will always buy his books. Even if this was shit, I would auto buy his next book because I wouldn't care. It's not going to be shit though because it's by Max Porter. This is about a little village that's not far from London. Yeah, like, I don't know. It's hard with a Max Porter book. He's so like wacky and his books are kind of all over the place that I don't know what it's about. I just don't care. Anyway, that's the last book. Oh my god, these are so heavy. So that is my book haul. These are all the books that I've bought in the last 4 months, which I don't think is that bad. Some people have this many books in 1 month. So I think I'm doing pretty good. And to be fair, at least I've read half of them. A lot of people do book hauls and like you could go and check the shelves a year later and all the same books would be on the shelves and they wouldn't have touched even one of them. So I've read quite a few of these, so I'm happy with myself. Thank you very much for watching. If you've read any of these books and want to tell me which ones to pick up, please do down below and I will see you in my next video. Bye!